Um, this is a, NFA, right? Following hex fractals are not for making investment decisions, right? So just remember that this past performance is not indicative of future results. All right, cool. So I posted this fractal back in January 8th of this year. People have seen it a bunch. It's my pinned tweet, and I had us coming down here to 0.2%. Well, why? Well, that's just because that's what Bitcoin did in the 2019 cycle, and I figured if HEX is supposed to be a store of value and compete with Bitcoin, perhaps it'll perform the same way, especially in this hyperinflationary period. And I even have annotated here triple bottom, and then PulseChain launch would be the peak, and then this would be our big payday 2.0 moment, and then at some time in next year we could actually be going back to 10 cents on this is on EHEX, right? So if you want to do your own mental modeling and figure out what the ratio is of the two hexes or however you want to work it out, I think the combined value should at least tap 10 cents before next summer based on this fractal. So then I went ahead and I updated that. This would have been, again, back in August, so a couple months ago. And you could see how accurate it actually ended up playing out where we came down here. Now this is sitting at 0.5 cents. We actually went lower, right? We went down to 2.8 cents. Right, but so this is kind of cool to see. Perhaps like this is the beginning of that shooting off that bottom, and then we could do some consolidation between maybe 0.5 cent and 2 cents. Maybe that there's a lot of volatility in here because we're resorting the liquidity and trying to get market makers to figure out, what's fair value based on the current supply and demand, based on how much coins are on the market, and after this restabilization period is done, then we should get that break of this downtrend to the top side and really, get back into what I think is more fair value for this coin, which is somewhere around 3 cents. And why do I say that? Well, because if you pull up the combined hex price, the all-time median price is sitting, I think, around 2.8 cents. So I think fair value for just EHEX on its own is somewhere between, let's say, 2.8 and 6.5 cents. I think this is where we'll spend most of our time next year. We might oscillate somewhere below or above that level, but you could see here that 1 cent per combined hexes is basically becoming a price floor. So there's a lot of data and evidence coming in to suggest that this was the bottom, right? And then one other thing, I have some fork and FUD comparisons from earlier in the summer. I think I'll call out Yash Deep. He's one who tends to think that EHEX is a joke and you're morally impaired if you talk about hex on Ethereum to any degree, which I just completely disagree with. I think that's totally baseless. Like, look at what happened to XRP after they got sued by Ripple. That thing ripped up 10x. And how many days was that? 106 days, 10x, right? So there was opportunity in XRP after they got sued, right? Then you got the big payday supply expansion where the entire supply increased by 30%. You got an 89% drop, right? It says 86.44 here. And then we all know what happened after that with the big run up to 56 cents, right? And just within 30 days, it actually ran up a 10x. And then in addition, I went and looked into Bitcoin Cash. Well, what happened when Bitcoin Cash forked off of Bitcoin? Well, there was a period here where Bitcoin Cash underperformed, right? And then it overperformed for the first time. And then they both consolidated sideways, and then it underperformed for an extended period of time, about 2.5 months, and bam, it overperformed for a short period of time. This is Bitcoin Cash overperforming Bitcoin in certain periods of the cycle, right? And then you scoot ahead till the following year, end of 2018. Bitcoin Cash ripped all the way up, straight up, and your time up here is very short, but the opportunity is the same. So when you're thinking about this EHEX trade, maybe this is the way to think about it. What's going to be the driving narrative? Is it going to be cheaper gas fees on Ethereum? Is it going to be that PHEX ran so freaking hard that profits flow out of the more expensive one into the cheaper one? I don't know, but I would definitely be cognizant of that as you're thinking about how you allocate. Here's another one: ETH Classic versus Ethereum. Another thing that Yash calls HEX Classic. Well, just so you know, brother, Ethereum Classic ripped 16,000% in 386 days and actually overperformed Ethereum for 386 days. And then it wasn't until the following 20 or so days that Ethereum caught up and hit up a 20,500% return, beating it by about 4,000% right at the end of the cycle. All right. So here's the following cycle. Now, this is how I think potentially how this cycle could go for EHEX. Like if the market wanted to stay overly bearish on it for an extended period of time, What does that look like? Well, it looks like a fucking long time to accumulate. We're talking 313 days that you could have accumulated Ethereum Classic at cheaper and cheaper prices. Meanwhile, Ethereum's getting more and more expensive. And when this was all said and done, in 30 days, you could have realized the same returns by investing in ETH Classic for that same amount of time, getting better prices and then nuking at the top. So think about these things. You know, this is serious alpha. Hopefully it makes sense. HEX is immutable code. It's the same on both chains. You got the same user base. Most of the guys that really fell for the PHEX only narrative are out, or they're staked too long without taking a penalty. So the runway is cleared, the overhead resistance is gone, and I'm super bullish on both of the hexes for this cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, to add one little thing to that, because we hear that question a lot. Well, if it's dead, it's dead. It's too late. Blah blah blah. Well, if all the people who capitulated are out, who's left to capitulate? And so there's fertile ground for other players who maybe want to build that back up to build it back up.
This is the 15-minute chart on EHEX. Wow. Yeah, exactly. Right. That's a good point. That's a very optimistic way of talking about it. Is like, look, if you overextended on the one side of the trade, you know, while these ratios are, look at EHEX popping up even higher on strength right now and breaking back above trend. That's crazy. If you, like, maybe you wait for like a snapback rally right now. So this is the HEX ratio. You know, maybe you wait for PHEX to gain a little bit on it and then get up to resistance, and then maybe you make your swap here. You know, it's not out of the question either. This is technically a support line till it's not, which is right around roughly these levels, which is 1.73 EHEX per PHEX.
Of course, for fun, I want to see him go to parity, just for fun. You know.
Yeah. You know, that's a funny thing is I don't know if the parity narrative has to be, you know, we'd both love to see it, right? But I don't think it has to happen that way, I guess.
Oh, no, of course not. Of course not. Well, you know, my base position on this whole thing is that I think that EHEX is at a discount for a reason, and it's because of the extra cost and time and effort it takes to transact, right?
Yeah.
And that could change. That could change. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I look at the Gwei. Did anybody think they were going to see 5 Gwei again? But here we are.